Hey everybody, welcome to the Insight Cafe. I'm your host, 𝗔𝗀𝗄𝗃 𝗁𝗠, and today, I have Amy Diener, and she is a New York artist currently based in Thailand. She is known for her vibrant dot paintings that are inspired by colors and patterns from her travels and experiences in life. But moreover, she's actually, for her background, she's going to tell you more about that when we get into the show, but she's known for transforming her own pain and suffering with mental health into a place of well-being through her expression with art. And because I come from a family of artists, and art is very close to my heart. So, and one of my other big passions is mental health, and you bring both to the table. So I knew I had to talk to you to share more about that. So without further ado, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate our little 30-minute of spotlight.
30-minute spotlight. So just to give us some reference, I'd love to hear about your journey. Like, how did you get here? How did mental health turn into art, or how did art turn into mental health?
Yeah, of course. So since I was a kid, I always was interested in art and painting. And then once I reached my junior year of high school, I had a really inspirational teacher, and that really motivated me to push my studies in art. And at the same time, I started dealing with some mental health issues, and that took place in the form of OCD. So when I was about the same time I started, like, professionally, or not professionally, but seriously painting, I started to experience a lot of anxiety that revolved around things that had been leading up from my childhood, such as my father was an influential figure in my life, and he sort of he didn't want me ever to forget anything. And so, for example, one time I was just for fun, I played softball, and I forgot my softball mitt, and I was still in the car. And we only had traveled maybe like 20 seconds away from the condo. And even at that point, I said, oops, I forgot my mitt. Like, I need my mitt to play, it's a softball game. And I remember he just started sort of yelling and screaming at me for forgetting it. And I think those sort of experiences, like other experiences similar to that, have sort of like traumatized me. And then I started having fears of forgetting all sorts of things, from things in my life, things I wanted to get accomplished, business things, personal things. And so that had manifested from that point. But art has always stayed with me, and art has always been one of my coping strategies in order to relieve aspects of my anxiety. So for me, art, and specifically painting dots, which is what I specialize in, helps free my racing mind. My mind is constantly sort of like in overflow, always trying to plan and think, and sometimes it's just too much. And so artwork is one of the ways where I can sort of settle down, breathe into it, and just like be mindful of the present moment.
Thank you for sharing. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, to having an overactive mind, or feeling overwhelmed by their thoughts. And just for people to get a better idea of what it was like maybe before you found art, and trying to manage yourself with thinking. Because also, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what OCD is like for you, because I think it's one of those things where people might have a misunderstanding of what it's like, because we had that conversation before this podcast where I thought it was one thing, but it's actually another thing. Like I'd love for you to briefly touch on that before we move forward.
Yeah, of course. So usually when you hear people talking about OCD, or you see it on Instagram, it's like, oh yeah, I'm a little OCD. Yeah, me too. And there's even, I believe, Instagram tags like a little OCD. And so most people have that concept of OCD being sort of just like about making everything neat and tidy and organized, so it looks perfect. However, it's not OCD unless it causes suffering and pain. So if it's creating anxiety, that's when I start to see it as it can be a form of OCD. If you are arranging things and rearranging things and you're doing it for hours and you're just never satisfied and you just have to keep going and going. So essentially with OCD, it's obsessive. So that's the like thought part. And then compulsive is the behaviors that are generated from the thought. So
Right.
for moving things around, the obsession is, oh, it's something bad is going to happen, whatever that may be. And then your compulsion would be to rearrange and rearrange and rearrange. Another common misconception would be like OCD is just like having to wash your hands a million times, because that's like one form of OCD, which is like contamination OCD, where you're afraid of germs, you're going to get sick and stuff like that. And I did experience that in different journeys of my mental health experience. I did do the multiple hand washing. I did multiple bathing routines, I have to get clean everywhere. And it caused a lot of suffering, but it's one manifestation or one sort of category of OCD. It takes place in many different categories.
And so, given that, how does art calm that, or how does art solve that for you or center you with that?
So it all starts from the obsession, right? So the compulsion is like instigated from the obsession. So if you can mitigate the obsession, and you can do that through putting yourself into a flow state, then your brain isn't focusing on that concern at the moment. It's focusing on embodying an experience. Right, when you're painting dots, like it's very repetitive. So it's repeating the same thing over and over again. That is just really calming for the brain. Somehow the neurons get aligned, and I'm no scientist, but it just helps to relax your overactive brain just by doing repetitive things. And that's why my paintings, they're so repetitive. As you can see behind me.
As we can see,
right?
Yeah, it looks like a sunflower. So, and I know in looking at your work, I can see that your work has created community as well. And I'd love for you to speak about how your work has created community, and also how, because I know in one of your missions is to bring awareness to mental health through your work. I'd love for you to speak on that as well.
Sure. So what I do is when I'm creating artwork, right, I'm talking about the process. So the process in itself is a way to cope with anxiety. So I'm always sort of sharing my process, like what I said, like it being a repetitive thing, it helping with my brain. And so for other people, it's kind of like a inspirational thing where they maybe too might want to try some kind of artwork or dot painting or any kind of repetitive art that might help them as well. So in that sense, it's almost like a teachable moment. And in the other sense, it's a way for me to share my background coming from a history of OCD. And I have my story, I'm very like, what to say, out of the closet. I sometimes I tell people right away. And then as we were talking about, there's always that, me too, like people can relate or have gone through something or something similar. So when I share my story, then I have a lot of people approaching me like, oh, thanks for having the courage to do that. Like, actually, I go through this as well, or I go through something similar too. Like, can you chat with me? Can you, and usually it's just a starting point, right? Because you need to like first understand that there might be some kind of issue taking place before you can ever really get help. There needs to be the awareness and understanding that there's all these resources around you. So I think because my artwork is very beautiful and very hypnotizing and mesmerizing, it draws people into the artwork already. So then I have like a backdrop. The artwork is also about mental health. The story is about mental health. The creating process is about mental health. The product is about mental health. So it's all sort of like me as the artwork, it's all intertwined.
I wonder if you could share with us some stories of people who have experienced transformation from working with you or with your art. Because one of the things I found interesting about your work is you started as an artist, and now there's an element to it that is kind of I guess what I would call art therapy, but it's just, it seems to me it's you're just allowing people to experience your transformation, and people call it art therapy, right? So I'd love for you to speak about that too, because I think people, I think to me, I think when and you spoke about it too, I think there's like almost like a stigmatism, especially in Asia, around mental health. And so we try to like find our own solutions first. It's a very lonely experience, right? And I can imagine when people find you, it's like, oh wow, like she gets me, right?
Yeah, it's that she gets me thing.
Mm,
Oh, so typically, I mean, for me, my artwork is a way to share the message. And then
mm,
from that point, I always respond to people. Like I'm a very like reliable person, I would say. I mean, one of my strong things is customer service. I'm very quick at replying to people, and I
yeah,
value people's time. And it's the same reciprocity, everything like that.
yeah.
So I know like anxiety is such like a time pressing thing, I mean,
Oh,
you
is
need,
that parts of OCD as well? Like,
yeah. So OCD is
interesting.
technically like a form of anxiety, right? So you
Interesting.
have
Mm,
OCD, you have bipolar disorder, you have schizophrenia, you have multiple personality disorder. And
mm,
so it all falls under the category of anxiety, although they might have changed that recently, but I mean,
mm.
that's still
Right.
like how
I
they're putting
understand.
it together in their
Yeah.
wording. But I mean, that's it's like the umbrella that everything
Mm,
sits underneath, I would say. But yeah, so like, for example, like the other day, I've never actually met her, but she will just say like she lives in my hometown, had reached out to me and said, Amy, like I was looking at your art, I was reading your story, and like I also have intrusive thoughts. So like intrusive thoughts are thoughts you don't want to have. And sometimes people, when they have an intrusive thought, it could be about something sexual, it could be about something taboo. There's even cases, and mine doesn't manifest in this way, but there's even cases where people might think they're convinced they're a lesbian, even though they know they like men, or they're convinced they're going to take a knife out and kill someone, even though that's not actually going to happen.
right.
And so there's all these sort of ways that you can cope with that. And one of the ways that you can cope is through therapy and legitimate therapy. And so usually because I went through it myself. I had
Mm,
years of therapy as well. So my art is one coping strategy, the therapy was another, and then the third one was medication. So I usually share those things. And then from there, like I will share also like who are the therapists that I worked with. And
mm,
because I'm not a professional in treating OCD, right?
mm.
But I have certain resources, so people will come to me and they'll feel comfortable to open up, and then I'm like happy to share those resources with
You're like
others.
the gateway to help.
Gateway. I mean, the thing is, I guess you could think of it like that, like a gateway, because to be honest, that's what I do in my life, even in
Right.
business.
Because I
I also
imagine,
kind of pass people a referral here and
yeah,
there.
yeah,
I'm passing like it's almost like an indirect thing, but it's still a gateway and it still makes change.
right.
I'm a strong believer in the experts are the experts, right? And
Yeah.
so even when I'm in my art business, I don't photograph my own artwork to scale up large. I hire someone who's an expert in that. So I always want to lead people to the experts so
Mm,
that they can help themselves get better faster.
right. I love that because I can imagine approaching a therapist in itself is can be intimidating
Oh
because
yeah,
you
well,
have to
just
admit that you
finding.
have to admit that you're not well, first of all,
Yeah, you
right?
have to admit that there's some kind of issue going on. And even just I say therapy, right? And I say therapist, but there's a specific type of therapist that manages people who go through OCD. And it's a therapist that understands ERP, which stands for exposure response therapy.
Mm,
And or sorry, exposure response prevention.
mm,
And it's pretty much doing the opposite of what you would want to do in your brain. So like I actually went to a conference a couple years ago, hosted by the International OCD conference, and we did an exposure, and it was a group exposure. Everyone went side. And one of the exposures that we did where we were sort of facing our fear head on, it didn't affect me, but some people it affected, is we actually walked in front of the cars and there were cars like beeping and honking and kind of cursing too. But the guy, the therapist who led it, he just said, just keep going. And then they realized, oh, it's not so bad, right?
Right.
I didn't get hit by the car. They had a fear, oh, I'm gonna get hit by a car, I'm gonna get hit by a car. And then you just do the very opposite.
Right. I think what you're
Yeah.
pointing to is, it seems to me that part of healing is a recognition of what it really is. I remember
Recognition of what it is.
like,
Yeah.
I think one of my mentors, he shares this story. Like he was in England doing like a fear dissolving thing, and he said that when he was doing the dress rehearsal and he had the people, there was like spiders, like people were afraid of spiders, and they brought all the people who were afraid of spiders, and like the show assistant came up with a box that had nothing in it and said, okay, on the live show this box will have real spiders in it. And he said everybody freaked out, the people who had a fear of spiders, and he thought, he was like, huh, there are no spiders in that box. And he began to see how that people's reaction, like what they were reacting to is what they were thinking, not the actual thing. And I think that's so helpful to know.
Yeah.
Like helpful to know what you're really afraid of or what's really bugging you, right? And I think in segueing back to your art, I think what I realized just now is, I think your art gives people space enough to recognize that.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, it's more than just a coping thing. It's a space to recognize, oh wait, I'm freaking out over my own thinking, because
Yeah.
I think that's important, right? I think your art, or what I'm understanding from what you're sharing, is the process of doing your art creates that space.
Yes, the process of doing, and also the product, because most of my designs are mandalas. Mandalas represent the self and they represent the cosmos. And when you look at a mandala, it can be a type of mindfulness practice. You can actually meditate over a mandala as well, and it can help with your intrusive thoughts. So it's all sort of connected. It's the process, it's the product, it's the story, as I was saying. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd love for you to share about that space, because it seems to me that that's like a key part of your work, is the space that people get in when they're doing it. And also, I think I saw one of your posts that your paintings are actually very tactile.
Yeah.
And like, I love touching shit. Like, because I think it's very human nature, right? Like you see something, you just want to like touch it. I'd love for you to share more of that. Like, why is it tactile? Because I know a lot of art, like don't touch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, actually, which is funny because yesterday on Facebook stories, I posted a picture and the painting is called Touch Me. Like that's actually the name, the title of the painting, because it's just so textured. So for me, the texture, it invites, your senses. It invites different levels of your senses. So if you are touching the artwork, you're focused on touching it, right? You're not focused on.
Is there like a presentness, like the tactileness of your art is bringing my attention to the there's
very like
one mentor said he had like a secret trick to eliminate everybody's problems, and everybody was like super trained and learned. He was like, tell us more, Dr. 𝗔𝗆𝗄𝗂𝘁. And he said, well, all you have to do is just press that fire alarm over there and everybody's going to forget whatever problem they were thinking about.
Exactly.
And they're like, and he expanded it, because I was like, that's pretty cool. He expanded and he said, the reason is because it brings your attention to the forefront. I'm like, oh wait, I need to get out of here. Or, oh wait, I'm touching a painting. And he was pointing to just how fluid our thinking is.
Yeah, it sort of serves as a redirection. It redirects your attention and brings awareness to something different.
Right. How did you, what was it like the first time you did a dot painting? Like, how did you get into dot painting? Because there could have been a million different types of paintings you could have done, but you chose.
Actually, so I was getting my master's degree at SUNY New Paltz, which is the school that I also did my undergraduate degree at in New York. And I had been like sort of at this phase where some of my artwork just sort of naturally had like decorative elements of dots in it, just like when you're playing with like stippling and patterning as an artist, you know, exploring different techniques. And then I went into this master's program, and I remember my professor said, what would happen if you just focused on a dot and everything you did was just dots? And I was like, sounds like an interesting idea. Let me try this.
Yeah.
So I had looked up like a bunch of different artists, such as Yayoi Kusama, who is famous for her polka dot painting. She's a Japanese artist, and she actually coped with her hallucinations. And one way she copes is actually through her artwork, her repetitive artwork as well, right? So I was looking at sort of different artists who create these dot paintings. And then I just tried it, and I just really enjoyed it. And my mind sort of like, there was like this freedom, and someone was saying it to me. It's like, there's so much organization happening in the artwork, but there's so much freedom happening through the organization. It's like freeing my mind.
I'm curious now as to, because you said cope, but I wonder if in the process of, in your journey of your art and your work, have the symptoms quieted down? Are they less? Are they more? Are they equal?
So I had mentioned it briefly before, but I'll touch more upon it. So I would say my 3 coping strategies or mechanisms. One would be the artwork, right? 2 would be the therapy. I'm currently not in therapy anymore.
Right.
I've sort of learned the tools and skills to be able to do it on my own. And then 3 would be the medication. And to be honest, the medication for me, and we were discussing it, like people like kind of like scared about putting things in their body, or there's sort of
Right, we spoke about that. Yeah,
stigma on medication, like oh, that's, you know, that should be your last resort, or like you don't know what you're sticking in your body, or you should try this holistic doctor instead, whatnot.
right.
And so, you know, I went through all that, and in the end, for me, the medication has been like a breakthrough. Because it's adjusting my brain somehow, you know, and it's increasing my serotonin levels, and it's making me feel more normal. So to be honest, if I stay on this medication the rest of my life, I'm happy. Because when I'm off it, I go like blue, 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 blue. So everything
Like
sort of mixed together is what comes together for me.
I think you're speaking to another challenge of, I think, mental health, in that there's stigma in getting help too, right? In like, and in the type of help you get, there's so much, everybody has so much opinion about your own well-being. I think that's fascinating. Like, what's it to you? You know what I mean?
This was
like,
a recent thing. I went to some event like a few months back, and I'll just say I met sort of a holistic doctor. And she was telling me, like, I said, yeah, like experience OCD. It's quite mild now. One of my coping strategies is I use art, and I also use medication. And then I got this like medication. No. Right. You know, that like,
you're like, thanks for the judgment.
and to be honest, I had tried other techniques before, okay, and I was kind of trying to back myself up, and then eventually I just like sort of was like, all right, you know, she has her perspective and I have mine, and that's
right. I think it speaks to
hold your ground.
Yeah.
You need to hold your ground, and you need to speak to what you feel like is the best for you and your well-being, right? Because nobody could really dictate your body and how you treat your body. In the end, it's you who makes a choice.
It's almost like you have to defend your choices again, right? And it's like, that's the last thing I want to do. You know, yeah. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about your art, because it's kind of free from judgment, right? It's an experience, and people can be present to it. I wonder if, because I maybe you can share this with me, because I always felt that the energy that goes into an art expresses itself through the art. Like, there's some art that just makes you stop and wonder. What do you think about that? About the transference of energy from an intention from you to your art, and then to your art to people? Because I think that what I'm curious about is how if your intention with your art is to help people with mental health, right? And then they're experiencing benefits to their mental health through your art because that was your intention, or that was part of the design. What do you think? What do you make of that?
As in, like, does the artist's intention sort of
Yeah,
align
and how it
with
impacts people
with
and
the viewers?
yeah,
Yeah, so like sometimes it does. So for example, if I don't, a lot of times what I do is, because I have my own art space in
right.
Bangkok, I have people come, and at first actually I don't talk about mental health or anything like that. I just have them come and I have them experience on their own terms.
Mm,
And then usually after like a little bit of a walk around, then I sort of go into it. And a lot of times actually there are, like, most of them say, are you going through something mentally?
yeah,
Like I do get that without having to say it before.
yeah.
But other times not so much. Everyone brings their own perspective in. Like,
Mm,
if someone's a scientist, they bring something scientific in. If someone's super spiritual, they bring something super spiritual in.
mm,
If someone, does things, oh, like they're an educator, they say, oh, I want to teach my kids this. It seems everyone will bring their own experience in it. And I think that's the beauty of it, because my experience is my experience alone, right? So I love to see other
yeah.
perspectives. So then we
It's
can
like,
create a community of experiences.
I think a mentor once said that we're always experiencing ourselves. And that blew me away. That we're seeing, like, I'm seeing myself in your art and you're just creating that opportunity. I think that's
Yeah.
really cool.
And the mandala is a reflection of the self. So you can see yourself.
Mm, cool. Well, I want to respect your time. So before, like, I guess to wrap up, if you could give a gift to people who are watching, it could be a knowing, an understanding, an insight, a joke. What would you give to people?
I think follow your intuition, listen to your own body,
Mm.
and be present.
So listen to your intuition. No, follow your intuition, listen to your body, and be present.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And so where can people, I'm going to put links in the description, but where can people hang out with you, or find out more about you if they want to attend a show and they're living in Bangkok or in Southeast Asia?
Yeah. So my website, and you'll put it in there,
Right.
is it's easy because it's my name. It's amydiener.com. I'm also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm quite really active on the social medias. I'm always sharing my experiences. Yesterday, I did a mindful workout and I had my paintings behind me and I went live. I deleted it after,
Oh,
but the people who got to see it in the moment, they got to enjoy
why did you
it.
delete it?
And then
Oh,
I also collaborate with a bunch of different brands. And so through the brand collaborations, I have a lot of different products with my designs. And so everything's all on my website that you can sort of check out, and you can find out more about me through there.
wonderful. I think if I make sure, I think what I got from this conversation was just how, I guess, how kind the design is, like the energy of life, and that if like you were dealing with this and somehow you found peace through your art, it was like a very designed for you solution that in turn helped make an impact for other people who might be suffering from similar things. And I
Yeah.
think from my part, to observe or to kind of see that and kind of speak to you and understand that better, I think that's really beautiful from
And
my
one
side.
more thing, which is something I've been thinking about, is the
Okay.
line, like, self-care first, right? So
Mm,
like, you need to take care of yourself, and figure out what you need in your life through
mm,
the help of different resources before you can really take care of anybody else. I mean, that comes down to everything pretty much in
yeah.
life. So I wouldn't be in the position I'm at right now, right, if I didn't take care of myself. So self-care is not selfish.
Yeah, I think one of my mentors, Mavis Karn, she said she calls it essential selfishness. And another colleague, another friend, she said being good with yourself is priority number one.
It totally
And
is.
then yeah, so if you're listening, don't be a dick, take care of yourself.
Take care of yourself.
T-shirts.
Maybe might be happening.
Yeah, this was wonderful. And I guess so right now, as of this video, the country's sort of opening up, right? So I hope to be able to attend your shows in the future and get to
Yeah,
meet
I
you
don't
in
have
person.
anything planned at the very moment, but I'm sure like things will get planned soon because I love to have exhibitions. Sometimes I have them in my own art space as well.
Okay, so we'll look for
Sure.
people can get more of that from your website.
Yes.
And all right, excellent. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we
Thank
will
you.
see each other
All
soon. All right, bye everybody.
right. Bye bye.